from the B2C side, like that sort of star power is endorsements and stuff like that is really important, right? We were just talking about today about like Mark Wahlberg's week, right? At F45. So Mark Wahlberg's an investor in F45, right? And I think he's trying to save a struggling company right now, and that's why he's doing it. But you know what? Like that star power matters, right?
And if you watch a lot of the big acts, like whether it's Bruce Springsteen, they have this ritual, but they get themselves physically, mentally in state, and then they perform. And I think as salespeople, we have to do that.
So rehearsal, for example, if you're giving a public talk, if you're giving a speech, I always try to go to the auditorium the day before or whatever.
Smart.
I go to the same place. I imagine people in the audience.
Wow.
Sometimes people say, imagine them naked. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how well that works. But you know, so you get yourself familiar. Now your brain, you're going to lower your cortisol, you know, because you're now in a familiar environment.
Makes sense.
So ratings and reviews are actually...
How does Bell Canada or Rogers recruit anybody? Like I can't imagine what their Glassdoor says.
Well, they certainly have to overpay probably.
Right.
You know, that's the other thing I looked at, right? Is like,
Yeah.
how much do we have to pay to keep our people?
Right.
Welcome to the Best Half Show. This is a show all about the big idea that the second half of your life could be 10 times better than your first, and still the #1 standing podcast in the world. Thank you for all of your support. Today we're going to talk about actually one of my favorite topics, which is about persuasion. The things that we've learned as business owners and as human beings in having to persuade people into our way of thinking by doing sales. Now, neither of us have been quota carrying, bag carrying sales guys, but we've had to do a ton of sales in our lives. We've had to sell people on our business ideas. We've sold our stock. We've sold people on careers and in our personal lives as well.
Wives.
Persuade people to marry us. Persuade people to bury us. Bury us. Not yet. Not yet. Not ready to die yet. To date us. And maybe some dates are like being buried. I don't know. But persuade our children to get off their phones.
Yes,
I mean,
that's the toughest one.
So much of success in life is to be able to persuade people into our way of thinking. A lot of what I have learned was through doing B2B sales. I know you've done sales on the consumer side. I think there's a lot of connection between the two of them.
Yeah, we're still selling to humans either way.
Right. Yeah, that's true. B2B sales is still selling to humans. It's one of the things that I used to, teach my sales guys. And even we used to celebrate in our company. We had the most celebration when our clients or customers, when they got promoted. Okay, when they got raises, when they got celebrated because they bought our software and they succeeded in their career,
right?
That's actually the time to celebrate. And really, that is really what they want, right? At the end of the day, yes. I mean, they work for a company.
Yes.
Hopefully they want the company to succeed. I think as the company gets bigger and bigger, or God forbid, they work for the government,
right?
They care more and more about themselves.
That's right.
When you sell to a startup, I think they're more tied into the company. But even as a startup, they buy your product because they want to succeed.
Yeah.
Right?
What can you do for me?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the other day, I mean, you covered in last week's episode, you covered some aspects of business to consumer sales.
Yes.
And I think even in business, I mean, people buy for, the 7 deadly sins. They, it's, vanity, it's lust, it's gluttony, it's sloth, like these sorts of things. I mean, humans still have a fundamental drive to survive and reproduce. That's why we're here, right? We're just fancy survival costumes for our DNA.
Yes.
So even when people are working for a business, they want to succeed personally, in terms of their career. So there's actually a big connection between consumer sales and business sales. I've done business sales, but
so Mark, let's talk about before you ever got on a sales call, before you ever go on a sales meeting. Let's talk about the prep work. Yeah. Let's talk about the research. Let's talk about getting yourself in state.
Yeah, I think that's great. I remember one of my first really consequential sales calls when I was at Eloqua, just starting out, 25-year-old guy, I had no idea what I was doing. And I was going to a sales call with Colin Bastable, who was the CEO of Royal LePage Commercial. So today that's Cushman and Wakefield. I had nothing. I just had basically a product in alpha, and a demo and whatever. And one of my friends at Bain was actually a door-to-door salesman before he became a management consultant, which was like totally weird. Actually, I was a door-to-door salesman too at some time. And the one thing he said is, you've got to think, Mark, that anyone who doesn't buy from you today is an absolute moron.
Right.
And that really stuck with me. And that's true. So one of the ways I psych myself up is to say, you know what I'm not selling anything. I'm here to help people achieve the feelings that they want. Right. And so I think that's why it's so important to believe in your product.
Yes.
So Jeff Immelt said, show me a great sales team. I'll show you a fantastic product that they sell.
Yes.
And I would say for anyone here who works for a company, if you don't believe in the product you're selling, or if you're trying to sell yourself, if you're trying to date someone and you could work on yourself a bit because you don't believe in your product, I'd work on that first before getting on any sort of dating app.
Yeah. I want to give an example about preparation and research. I think especially for B2B, it's important. So I was trying to raise money for N5R and it was hard. I'd worked so hard on the presentation. I took courses on how to, how to raise money. So finally my lawyer set up a meeting for me with a guy named Bo Pellick. And Bo, if you're watching, you're a great friend. I love you. And you might not remember the story.
I'm Mark Organ. I'm co-host of The Best Half Show, all about how to make the second half of your life 10 times better than your first. I've been a successful software as a service company CEO. I've created companies like Eloqua and Influitive. And today I help category defining software company CEOs generate massive success in their businesses. You can find out more about me at categoryknots.com. And if you qualify, you get a free 45-minute session with me. I'll generate a lot of value for you right in that session. And if we hit it off, maybe you'll be a client.
But I'm doing my presentation for N5R, and Bo literally falls asleep during my presentation. So as a presenter, it's not a good feeling, but he closed his eyes. He was literally sleeping. But I did one thing before the meeting, Mark, which was life-changing for both of us. I think Bo and I. What I did was, we didn't have Google back then, we had Alta Vista, but I had put Bo Pellick's name in Alta Vista, and I found out that Bo was at York University. He was a basketball star, a real star at York University. So as he falls asleep, I just blurt out, I said, Bo, you understand what I'm talking about? You are a star at York University. You're a basketball star. And he just kind of wakes up a bit. And he says, how much money do you want? And I said, $100,000. He stands up, shakes my hand. He says, it's yours.
Wow.
So, but it was the research. But imagine if I hadn't taken that 5 minutes before the presentation, and that lesson I learned, and every time I have an important meeting, I always do my research.
Yeah.
So maybe you have an experience like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And these days, I think there really is no excuse for not doing that, because I think social media, like between X and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and whatnot, I mean, even the most private people have something that
you could always find something
that you could know about them. Yeah, yes. The one that just pops to mind, right now is I was trying to get Jason Lemkin to invest in my company. So Jason Lemkin runs a organization called SaaStr. It's probably the #1 SaaS media organization in the world. And at the time, SaaStr was becoming kind of a big thing. And one of my strategies in my companies was getting people that I liked, or who were famous, or who had access, whatever, to invest in the company so that they felt like they were part owners. And, I called him up and I'm like, I'd love for you to invest. He's like, I'm too busy, and all these sort of excuses and whatnot. So one of the things, we did a little bit of research on him, and it turns out that he had an old car that he was restoring, and he had a picture of it on Facebook. So I had my office manager, she got a suitcase, just like a carry-on suitcase, and she wrapped it in images of this car. Wow. And sent it to him. Okay.
Wow.
It cost us, I don't know, $100.
Yeah.
Anyway, he invested 17 grand, which is like nothing for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
But more importantly, he put me on the main stage for 3 years in a row at his conference.
Wow.
And he introduced me to the guy who ended up becoming my head of product.
Wow.
So like millions and millions of dollars worth of value. And then after when I told other investors, Jason Lemkin's on board, along with all these other, important famous people.
Yes.
And I think from the B2C side, like that sort of star power is endorsements and stuff like
huge.
that is really important, right? We were just
doing
talking about
it,
like Mark Wahlberg's week, right?
Yes,
At F45.
yeah.
So Mark Wahlberg's an investor in F45,
Right.
And I think he's trying to save a struggling company right now, and that's why he's doing it. But you know what? Like that star power matters,
Yes,
right? You got it. I told you about transcendental meditation,
Yes,
right? How am I going to convince you to try TM? Because it's a pain in the ass. It takes 4 days to learn it.
Yeah.
Well, Ray Dalio is a big proponent of it.
Right.
All right. Jerry
Jerry
Seinfeld. Is a big
Yeah, that's all you have
proponent
to
of
say.
it,
You say
right?
Jerry Seinfeld, I'm in.
And it's like
Yeah,
all these
yeah.
guys who are so successful in life,
That's
they're
right.
doing it, you know.
Yes.
And so the same thing is true consumer sales, business sales.
Yes.
Human beings are herd-like,
Yes.
right? And they look for what's called social proof, right? And see
Yeah.
that people that I respect have not just bought this product, they like this product.
Yeah.
But I think you can do that really in really any aspect of sales. Again, trying to get your kids to get off their phones.
Yes.
Well, these kids have got off their phones and they've done really, really well. You want to be like them, right?
Yes. So let's talk about, so we talked about research. Now, so this morning we both did our F45. We're feeling peak state. And maybe for some people that are watching, they don't understand that there's like a 12-hour benefit. Like you feel amazing for like the next 12 hours after you do your workout. Maybe talk about getting yourself in state before you pick up the phone, before you do that Zoom presentation, before you do your sales. Maybe just talk about getting yourself in state and how important that is.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I do. I mean, so one is I am a fan of transcendental meditation. So if I have a really important meeting, I will meditate first. TM is very different from other forms of meditation. Basically, you just repeat a word over and over again in your head. It's a mantra. It's some word in Sanskrit or whatever that sounds good. And you just repeat it over and over again. It's not like your typical mindfulness meditation, which is a big workout. This is very relaxing. And when you're done your TM, you are both relaxed and focused at the same time, which is wonderful. It's really good. So I will do that before.
Okay.
I will tell myself, whoever doesn't buy from me today really is an idiot because I'm going to really be helping people.
Yes.
If I really need to get in state, I'll do a bunch of squats.
Wow.
You know,
Okay,
that
good.
sort of thing. Yeah. Actually, Robin's the same thing. Backstage, right? He does squats up and down like that.
Yeah, yeah.
It really gets the blood going into your head or whatever.
Well, he's got a little trampoline thing he's jumping on as well before he goes on stage.
Oh, I haven't seen that. He's elevated from the squats.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do that. But yeah, a lot of it is really mental. Is that power of belief? Because I think prospects really can feel it. They can feel that difference.
The energy.
Yeah, the belief, like that you really, truly believe that. That confidence that you have, that their life, whether you're selling on business, you're selling consumer, that their life is going to improve, that they're going to be rocketing their career, that they're going to have an amazing investment, that they're going to have a bright future, as they're a child, that they're going to have a lifetime of happiness if they're a spouse to be.
Yeah.
They have to really believe it.
I think what we're talking about is so important. The research is obviously critical, but when you get yourself in state, I remember I went to a David Bowie concert and I had these really crappy tickets, like really bad, like they're kind of like behind the stage. But the benefit of it, before David Bowie came on stage, I watched what he did. He's holding hands with a band and he just started jumping. And they're just like jumping, getting themselves in state. And then they introduced me, he runs out. And if you watch a lot of the big acts, like whether it's Bruce Springsteen, they have this ritual, but they get themselves physically, mentally in state, and then they perform. And I think as salespeople, we have to do that.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Roman Bodnarchuk from The Best Half Show. I'd love you to join me on a 75-day complete transformation. I want you to join me because I'm going to do it with you. It's 75 days where I believe together we can create and become the best of our possible selves. Imagine in 75 days, we have the best bodies of our lives. Imagine in 75 days, we look the best we've ever done. I really believe we can do it. So I look forward to you joining me on the 75-day transformation.
Yeah, for sure. And as presenters, right? So a few things that I do, there is rehearsal. So one of the things about rehearsal is that the same parts of the brain get active as when you're actually doing it. So rehearsal, for example, if you're giving a public talk, if you're giving a speech, I always try to go to the auditorium the day before or whatever.
Smart.
I go to the same place. I imagine people in the audience.
Wow.
Sometimes people say, imagine them naked. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how well that works. So you get yourself familiar. Now your brain, so you're going to lower your cortisol, because you're now in a familiar environment.
Makes sense.
One of the things that I'm a big fan of for salespeople is we call it role practice, role playing. So, so I think you do the same thing before any critical meeting. Do the meeting in advance.
Yes.
If you have a critical interview you're going to do, have someone play the role of an interviewer, right? And go through that. Because if you've handled an objection 3 or 4 or 5 times already in practice, when you get it in a real deal, you're going to be really prepared for that. And your confidence shows. When you're prepared for a meeting, you're so confident. Yeah, for
Makes
sure.
a huge difference.
Yeah. So I would definitely advise have somebody help get as much as possible. Do a rehearsal of some sort.
Right.
And I think that helps a lot.
So Mark, let's get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, let's get into the actual meeting itself.
Yeah, so now into the meeting itself. And just for those of you who don't know, Mark's built some incredibly successful companies. One was acquired by Oracle for almost $1 billion. So he knows what he's talking about. And he's always been a disruptor in categories, like new industries, like creating whole new categories, products that didn't exist before. So let's talk about, what you learned, which was, I guess, hiring and training these salespeople. What were the key things in terms of sales? What were the most important things in B2B sales?
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because when I first started at Eloqua, I just hired a couple of salespeople that looked like they had great resumes. I really didn't know what I was doing. And I was really lucky in that I had an early investor that was also a sales trainer.
Okay.
And so the first thing he told me is, you need to fire your salespeople.
Right.
These aren't good people, and you need to get trained yourself in sales.
Yes.
So he put me through sales training.
Excellent.
Which I really owe him a lot. His name is Vince Shirelli. I really owe him a lot because again, there's so much about sales that applies to almost everything in business, and even in life itself. And so it's hard to boil down, everything that I learned in sales, but a lot of success in sales is driven by the sales meeting itself, or the sales call, right?
Okay.
So we talked a little bit about what happens before,
the prep.
Before the sales call.
Yeah.
And really the meat of a sales call are questions.
Yes.
And so what I would say is this has evolved because of the internet. So when I first started in sales, I guess in 2000, everybody was reading a book called The Solution Sale by a guy named Brian Bosworth. And it was like the Bible of sales at the time. Everybody was reading it. And it was all about how to ask, the right questions and really be listening and be a trusted advisor to the prospect, right? You want to produce a sales call that is so effective and valuable that the prospect will be willing to pay for it.
Right.
And so that's what the solution sale is all about. That same guy, Bosworth, 10 years later said, I actually repudiate a lot of what I wrote. Which is amazing. He said, the reason why is that the internet has changed a lot of things. And he's right.
Yeah.
He's like, these days, buyers know more than sellers many of the time.
Absolutely, they do. They do their research.
They do their research. I mean, these days, you can, within 10 seconds, you can go and get reviews.
Yes.
Reviews, whether it's Yelp or whether it's G2, which is the business equivalent of software, even things like Glassdoor, where you can find out all you ever want to know about a company and its leader, right? It's all there. Like, we managed our Glassdoor like our life depended on it in my last company. Yeah, because not only for hiring.
People don't know what Glassdoor is.
So Glassdoor are basically rating and reviews of companies.
Right.
So if you go look up any company, go look up at Apple or go look up any company, and you'll find that there's all these people who've worked there, who've talked about their experience, and they also rate the leader. They rate the CEO. So if you go onto my last company at Influitive, you'll find a bunch of ratings and reviews about me. Most of them quite good. But it's very important because we would ask our people that we've hired, what was most important in making this decision to come and join us? By the way, that is a great question in general.
Yes.
What was most important in you making a decision in our favor? Yes. Everybody should be asking that. Even ask your spouse, what was most important in your decision to marry me? You want to know that. Yeah. Because that's like critical insight for you. And what we found, to our surprise, was Glassdoor was crucial. Wow, absolutely crucial. Everybody would go there. They would read all the reviews in huge amount of detail.
Isn't that amazing?
Before making it. So then we know, wow, that's really important. So whenever we had a bad review, we really did a good job of providing our perspective on it.
Right.
People would, and we even use Glassdoor when we were doing purchasing. So let's say you have two companies.
Interesting.
Okay, two companies. They both that you like produce marketing services.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's N5R and Company B. Okay. Yeah. And frankly, they don't look that different from each other. They have the same services, about the same costs. And so on. Yeah. Who do you choose? Well, one way to choose is go to the Glassdoor, and if people are saying Roman Bodnarchuk's a visionary, we love working at this company. the other one is like meh.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick the one where the employees love to work there.
Right.
Because more likely the product roadmap is going to stick around. It means I'm going to get better customer service.
So
right?
interesting.
Yeah. If you've got big turnover in the customer service ranks, how good is that service going to be when you have a new service person every 6 months?
Yeah.
Compared to having service people that have been around for 3 years.
Yeah.
So ratings and reviews are actually
Mark, I wonder how does Bell Canada or Rogers recruit anybody? Like I can't imagine what their Glassdoor says.
Well, they certainly have to overpay, probably.
Right.
You know, that's the other thing I looked at. Right, is like how much do we have to pay to keep our people?
Right.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's it. Right. And you know, they say, you know, great companies don't really have to advertise. Like, how much does Tesla advertise? Not at all. Zero. They don't need to.
Yes.
Right. Because they have a great product.
Right.
And the advocates basically are selling that product for them. Yes. I think the same thing is true when you're hiring. Yeah. And honestly, even in a dating type of scenario, I think it's really relevant. Right. If you know, people asking around, like, who are your friends? Like, what do my friends think of this guy?
Yes.
You know, so I think, and I think that's becoming more and more and more and more important as time goes on, is like, who else is saying good things, you know, about the company.
Yes.
But anyway, so the sales call is crucial, and it really, that's really the meat of it. And it comes down to questions.
Yes.
The internet has changed things. Now buyers are very much, they know everything. So what is the job of a salesperson in that environment? And so there's a great book called The Challenger Sale, and that really a lot of people in the software business are reading now. And the Challenger Sale is all about the idea that someone is only going to buy from you when you've changed the way that they think about a problem.
Interesting.
Because the enemy of your sale is good enough.
Yes.
And that's true whether you're selling, in my case, you're selling software, or you're selling stock. It's like, my investments are good enough, or you know what, I'm happy being single on the occasional date. I don't need to commit to you. Whatever it is, like, status quo is good enough. So somehow you need to change their state, that the status quo actually is not going to work. And the way to do that is you need to challenge them. Yes. And you've probably done, I mean, think about you even doing consumer sales.
Yes.
How have you challenged people to change the way they think about a problem?
So Tony Robbins teaches this, and I've learned it. So if I want to sell you a table, I have to take your table and I've got to break the 4 legs of your table. Hi, it's Roman Bodnarchuk from The Best Half Show. Hey, just want to introduce myself. Some of you have been watching our podcast. Some of you don't know, what I did before this. So age 14, bought my first piece of real estate. I've literally bought and sold and rented hundreds of properties since then. And I've done this in 5 countries around the world. Then I started my first company, age 30, raised over $1 million in venture capital, became the 11th fastest growing company in the country, the 13th fastest growing company, incredibly successful. Well, what I'm most proud of is helping 5 different startups reach over $1 billion in sales. But I am willing to help you on a 15-minute call, scale your business, scale your life, whatever you want to really transform. And if you're serious, you're going to do it. And again, it's Roman Bodnarchuk, and I look forward to meeting you and helping you. So if it's a business-to-business sale, we'll talk about all the different problems you're having, and we have to break those legs to sell you a new table.
Brilliant. Yeah, and that's exactly what they say in the Challenger Sale, is that first you have to break the old model, that the old model isn't going to work.
Yeah.
So that's different from what most people do. So whether it's in a business-to-business sale, what do people know, what do sales reps do, or again, even CEOs that are selling, they talk about how great their product is, right?
Right.
In a dating scenario, look at my product, look at my abs, right? Look at my bank account or whatever it is. It actually doesn't work very well.
Right.
You first have to basically show somebody that their current way of thinking isn't going to work.
Yes.
So that's great. So what I used to at Influitive, where I sold a gamified community product, I would lead every presentation with a provocative question, which was, when was the last time you bought something risky or expensive because of an email you received from a vendor? And everyone would be like, that's been a long time, right? Of course, you're not going to change your mind because of an email you received from a vendor.
Right.
It's like, what makes you buy something risky or expensive? Probably a message from a trusted peer, someone you trust. How much money are you spending on that form of marketing versus spamming with email marketing?
Right.
Everyone looks down at their navel, and I got them.
Yes.
At that point, I've got them because I've exposed a incongruency between the way they buy and the way they want to buy and the way that they're selling.
Right.
Now their mind is open. So I've broken the old model.
Yes.
The old model is now broken, and now their mind is open, and they're like, all right, buddy, what do you have to sell?
You're right.
And so I think, again, that principle, because of the internet, because of social media, because everybody has access to all the now ChatGPT and AI, this is now on steroids. You have access to everything you could ever want to know. The only hope you have of convincing somebody is to show that the current road isn't working. And then we can go and talk about this fabulous new vision for what it is that we want to sell.
And I think it's easy to do now because the world has changed so radically just the last couple of years. So imagine selling something pre-COVID versus after COVID. It's a different sales pitch. Like it's because the world has changed radically. Buying behavior, work behavior, everything's changed so much. And I think what you spoke about earlier about social proof is so important. I remember we got our first B2B client, which was Tridel, and they're the #1 Connor developer in Canada. So when we told somebody else, oh, we're working with Tridel, the #1, and like if they're #2 or number 17, like, oh, if they're using you, you must be good. So I think that social proof is really important as well.
Yeah, no, it's critical. There's a book, I think it's one of the best business books of all time. It's a book called Influence by a guy named Robert Cialdini, who is not actually a business guy. He's a psychologist. He's a social psychologist. He actually spoke at my conference a couple of times, which is pretty awesome.
He's amazing.
He is amazing. Yeah, even now he's 80 years old. He's still presenting and whatnot. But he talked about these principles of basically social psychology, of which one of them is social proof. But a couple of others that I leveraged, especially when I was in doing house painting before I got into business. He talked about, for example, the foot in a door technique is very famous. So the idea here is that before asking for a big favor, ask for a small favor. And get compliance about that. You'll even see, you get even somebody signing up on your website for something. That's a little something. They're giving you a little bit of a commitment, and then you can get larger commitment. I know when I was painting, one of the things that we would do is we would ask like the next door neighbor, hey, do you have any water for my guys who are painting? And then, hopefully, she's like, oh, is that all? I'm like, well, if you have any lemonade or anything, that would be amazing. Right. And so what is that? That's actually the next thing. Next thing you know, we're painting our house, next week.
You got your foot in the door. Yeah.
That's foot in the door. And then there's the opposite one, which is actually called a door in the face. And the person who's made this most famous is Donald J. Trump. So he's famous for this, for having an outlandish, ridiculous request. Right. Which I don't think he has any intention of anybody really doing. I need $400 million for that. Is like, okay, how about $4 million? Now
that works too.
Becomes a smaller risk. So I think again, the idea here that selling or persuasion is important for all facets of life. This book, Influence by Robert Cialdini, is amazing. He wrote a sequel called Persuasion. It's also very good. I think that's great. So that's, I think, one facet of the idea of, changing the state, breaking the old model for the new one. There's another sales book that's older, but I think is almost like the companion to the Challenger sale. And it's called Spin Selling.
Very famous.
One of the things I love about both Spin Selling and a Challenger sale is based on data. Okay, this isn't just thoughts and ideas. Like in Spin Selling, the author, the name escapes me right now. I think there was like 2,000 sales calls that he actually was a part of, and he tracked all of the data, that were a result of it. That's why I love these two books. And so Spin Selling is all about taking what is perceived to be a small problem and making it into a massive problem. Because are people motivated to solve small problems? No, it's got to be huge. Even if they're motivated, they're not going to prioritize it, right? So we want someone to want to solve this problem now. Sales is all about now. I want you to prioritize this problem, and I want you to try to take action on it today, right? And so the idea behind Spin Selling is that not all questions are equally valuable. Okay, so the SPIN stands for situation, problem, implication, and need payoff. So situation questions are, they are basically questions all about someone's situation. How many people do you have in your company? What's your marketing budget? Do you have a boyfriend, right? These are situation questions. Every time you ask one, you lose 1 point. So you want to ask a minimum number of these. Now you have to ask some because you need to understand the situation. But to your point, if you can get this stuff in advance of social media,
Yes.
if you can learn, if you can go to LinkedIn and you
Yeah.
can find out all about their company,
Yeah.
if you can go on their Instagram and understand a little bit
Yeah.
about their social life, then you don't have to ask as many questions because again, it costs you a point. The reason why it costs you a point is it's annoying to answer it. I'm not getting any value answering that question for you.
Yes.
Right. So that's,
and you're annoying the buyer. I find this with interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So people come for an interview and I ask them, why do you want to work for our company? And they're like, well, I went to the website. Okay, great. So why do you want to work for us? But maybe they looked at the homepage, but they've never read anything.
Right.
And usually that's where the interview ends for me. I'm like, look, if you don't really understand why you're here, you haven't taken the time to do some research, like we don't want to deal with those people. And I think buyers are being hit on all the time by all these companies trying to sell them. Yeah. Think about how many of these blind LinkedIn things we get every day. Like it's just annoying. Yeah. And always talk about their product. Nobody cares. It's about how much do they know about your company? How much research have they done? How can they solve a problem that you've got? People want to work with people that are going to help them, not just trying to sell them something.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And again, I think this applies just as much in the consumer world, right? So if you're asking your kid a lot of boring, mundane questions, which a lot of parents do, what did you do in school today, honey? Did you like that? Did you learn something you like? Boring. These are boring questions. Yeah. And kids are just going to shut off because honestly, they're not getting any value.
Correct.
From that. So I think that's a great point about the buyer experience, right? And again, buyers are also in the consumer world. Buyers are investors. They're people looking for jobs or all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah.
I want to talk about another point called urgency. And I think Salesforce.com does it great. Most really successful organizations, they always, it's the end of the, or HubSpot. Hey, it's the end of the month. We have to hit our quota. We have to hit our numbers. So we're offering these really incredible promotions or discounts. I find that, and even consumer marketing, you always see, that you get those direct mails. If you get this before the first of the month, let's talk about urgency because I think that's a huge part of sales.
Yeah, well, I think that's what we're getting to with the spin selling, right? So as we move from the S into the I and the N, the urgency builds up pretty rapidly without resorting to gimmicks. Okay, because gimmicks don't really work, I think. I think people are aware. I think that's one of the reasons for Walmart's success. There's no gimmick with Walmart. What you see is what you get. They're always going to have low prices. But yeah, I think we could talk about some of those things. At the same time, people do want a deal. They want a deal, but what they don't want is a gimmick. But we'll I want to go to the rest of the model, right?
Sure.
So the next one is P, which is problem. And problem questions don't cost you any points, but you don't get any points. There's zero. And this is your classic, what keeps you up at night. So at least you're not losing any points, but when you're asking somebody, a prospect, so what are you worried about? And they start telling you what they're worried about, then you're starting to get somewhere.
Right.
But again, you're still not getting any points. So if you just ask a whole bunch of problem questions and they're getting to the end of the interview, again, this is the same thing. Same thing, you're doing that with your kid or you're out on a date and you're asking the same question, you're really not getting into the juicy stuff yet.
Right.
Where it gets really interesting are with the I and the N questions. So I are implication questions. And so you get like 8 points for this or something, 5 points or 8 points. I think it's 5 points. You get 5 points for every implication question. And the reason you get more points, first of all, they're hard to ask, but they're really valuable. So it's like, the fact that you are missing your product delivery deadlines, how does that affect your ability to hit your financial results? How is that affecting your ability to recruit? Now all of a sudden they're taking a problem which they're like, whatever. Every now and again, we're not able to document our product properly or some shit, right? And so sometimes we slip by a few days. But now all of a sudden, this is not $1 million problem. This is actually $1 billion problem. So they actually draw these boxes where for every problem, you actually draw out what the implications of that problem are.
Interesting, yeah.
So again, even on a consumer side, so the fact that you're worrying more about this, like, is it costing you in terms of sleep?
Right.
The sleep that you're losing, are you gaining weight as a result? Are you hitting your workouts? Are you more irritable with your spouse or at work? Is it costing you your promotion?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, this little thing that might have been a $34.99
huge problem now.
is now potentially going to lead to a $5 million divorce, right? So all of a sudden, it's like, this is a problem I've got to solve. I've got to make my room smell better, because otherwise I might get this big divorce.
Yeah.
So implication questions. And again, it's hard to ask because it feels a little bit like pandering.
Yes.
The way that you get around that, okay, like saying like, oh, is this costing you some sleep? You're like, do I feel like a slimy sales guy? Yeah. The way to get around that is to be genuinely curious.
Yeah, you got to be curious.
Okay, like you're not trying to sell anything.
Yeah, you're trying to help them.
You're trying to help them. And in your mind, you're almost like, if I don't see a big success here, I'm not going to sell it.
Right.
I'm just going to say, you know what? You're not a fit, right? Because my job is to help people.
Yes.
I care about my reputation more than I actually care about the sale.
Right. Right. No, that's really good. The questions are so important. And I think watching their body language sometimes, you can start seeing where the pain points are. The physiology.
For sure. So what do you look for example?
Well, for example, in a Zoom call, I love Zoom calls. I love video calls because you can just see that when you hit a pain point, you can just see how all of a sudden their shoulders move or their eyes move. But I think it's watching the body language, being curious and just watching. And then some things they don't care. So if they put their arms like this, like they really don't care. But if they move in, if they start like leaning in, you can tell you've got them. So watching their body language is really important.
There's an eyebrow flash. That's actually a classic one. So So for really important sales calls that I had, I would often have what we call a four-legged call. So you would have another person there, and the other person's job is really, because let's face it, when you're presenting, unless you've presented the same thing 100 times, and hopefully you get to the point where you present 100 times, because then you can really study the buyer more.
Yeah.
Most people are thinking about what else they're going to say.
Correct.
Next, what they're going to ask.
Yes.
And so you're missing things. So you have another person, again, same thing, again, you're on a date, you have a double date, you have another guy. Yeah. The other guy's looking at the woman's face, and giving some really essential insights about it.
Yes.
I think body language is really key. It leads to the last one, which is probably the most important questions of all, which are need payoff questions. So these are basically questions that quantify the value, right? So now that you've made this thing from $1 million to $1 billion, you want to get the prospect to actually say, yeah, this really is $1 billion problem.
Yes.
So they start to quantify it, whatever. And if you're doing a good job, they go to you and say, when's the next time you can come back?
Right.
Where I can bring my boss and my boss's boss and everyone else, because this is something that we have to, absolutely solve. Yeah.
I want to just tell a story about how a meeting can end, because I think the ending of the meeting is very important. So it was, he was Greek and he was a billionaire. It was in Chicago, one of the largest, on a company called Invesco, one of the largest real estate holders in America. And he's in his 80s, and he gave me 3 hours of his time, which is to me was the most valuable thing. And he's banging on the table, and he says, you can never leave a meeting until you've already confirmed the next appointment. He goes, otherwise, you just wasted your time. Yeah. It was so powerful, because every meeting is just to get to the next meeting. It's just to get to the next one. And a lot of people do their presentation. Okay, thank you so much. I'll follow up with you next week, or I'll call you, or email. Like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You can never leave a phone call, never leave a meeting until you've booked the next one.
That's fantastic advice. And I'm thinking about the mistakes I've made by not doing that.
Right.
Because I think, you kind of want to skip out of that call.
Right.
I don't know about you, but while I do enjoy sales, it's stressful.
Yeah, it's hard.
I want to get out of there.
Yes.
I want to get out of this very intense, stressful thing.
Yes.
And so you just want to get off the phone or out of that meeting as soon as possible. But you're right. No, that is a mistake.
Yeah. And let's talk about urgency, because again, companies that you're familiar with, like Salesforce, that, and I'm sure you did it at Eloqua and other companies that you've run, but creating that urgency, like reasons to buy now, I think it's really important.
Yeah, so I think you're right. A lot in sales, we talk about the why and the why now. Again, I think this works for lots of things beyond sales. And where most people make a mistake is they get the why, but not the why now. So one of the things I do, when selling software, is look for something that's going to drive a higher sense of urgency.
Yes.
So I'll give you one example from Influitive that we learned was that one of the most potent drivers of using software like ours is when they're having a critical event like a user conference or one of their annual events and this sort of thing. And the reason why is that if it falls flat, it's really embarrassing. And it's embarrassing for like the CEO and the board or whatever. It goes way beyond even money because it's their reputation that's on the line. So we would actually go and look for when companies were having their annual event. And if we started prospecting them like 4 months before the event, not 6 months. So 6 months is too far away, right?
Yes.
2 months or 3 months, it's like, oh, it's a little tight. You know, we have our plan locked and loaded, whatever.
Yes.
But 4 months away, they have like this kitchen sink mentality, right? Which is like, we're going to throw everything at this event to make sure it's successful, including your community thing.
Yes.
And they also have a budget that's there. They've got a big budget. And so they can go and say, yeah, you know, we can move some things around. Instead of buying really fancy centerpieces, we'll buy your software at the same time. So I think looking for an event that is going to be a driver of urgency. So that's like a non-gimmicky way to drive it. Like what I don't love is to say, hey, we got a sale on this month. Look, we've all done it. We've all resorted to these things.
Yes.
But you know, like customers don't like it. They feel manipulated, and eventually you get found out. And then you start training buyers to just look for sales.
Look for deals. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas the organic way to do it is to find like a legitimate source of urgency.
Yeah.
And then you drive your whole marketing and sales process, you know, against it.
Let's talk about one more thing. And I think this is true in business to business as a consumer. When I try to book a meeting with somebody, I give them like two options. I don't give. So for example, if I say, Mark, let's have a meeting next week. That's a really bad question because your brain is like going, oh my gosh, there's like 7 days, which day? So I'll say, hey, next week, Mark, would Monday or Tuesday be better for you? Yeah. So now you're fixed on Monday or Tuesday and you're like, I don't know. Well, okay, Tuesday. If you did know, do you think morning or afternoon would be more convenient for you? So now you're just thinking about Tuesday. We've narrowed to Tuesday. It's morning, afternoon. And you say, maybe afternoon. It's like, great. Do you think 1:30 or 3 p.m. would be more convenient for you? And we're nailing it down. But what I find is if you don't get to 2-option close, you will get nowhere. And this is true for products, for decisions. People can't make decisions. It's so hard. Yeah. And if you give them 2 options, it's really easy for them.
Yeah, I think that's a great principle. No, that's a great principle of neuroscience right there. There's something called the paradox of choice. If you have too many choices, people are paralyzed and can't make a decision.
Yeah.
And that is one of the big problems with buyers today. And again, this is both true in business, but also in our personal lives. So in business, you're right. Buyers are completely dysfunctional. It used to be where it took like, it was 5 people in order to make a decision on business software. It's now up to 9 people. It's completely dysfunctional. Any one person can say no. So what you need to do is, as a seller, you got to lay out this roadmap of how this decision is going to get made.
Right.
Everyone agrees to it, you know, and then what the seller is really doing is not selling every individual person in the buying center, but is finding what's called a coach. So finding somebody who is adept at selling to everybody else. So you get a coach or champion.
Yes, champion.
And that champion speaks financial ease to the CFO, speaks strategic language to the CEO, speaks whatever it is to the marketing person. And you kind of arm that person with everything that they need. And then they, in turn, do a lot of the selling. And again, I think some of this stuff can be leveraged in personal lives too. Like, for example, you're trying to get your son to go and, do something.
Yeah.
Maybe you can work on his friend, right? So you
absolutely.
Right? You have someone, or someone else that he respects, so he looks, or that he looks up to. That person may be a more effective way to get that message across, than you. So
there's something else we do in consumer marketing, and I don't know if it works in B2B, but you'll think of an idea. So let's talk about in real estate. We've been involved in $6 billion of sales. And if I'm trying to sell you a condo building, there's a lot of units. Yeah. So I've got to really narrow down specifically what you're looking for. So now if it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and you want the kitchen to be on the right, or you want the balcony, I'm always narrowed down to like the 2. So there could be 300 units in that building, but I'm literally figuring out the 2 that are going to work for you. And I give them the A or the B. And then I let them know they need to make a decision now, because otherwise one of those 2 is going to be gone and they're going to live with regret. And I do this even in our co-living business. Like we might have 100 units in a city and they'll say, what do you have? And so we get the information, what specifically you're looking for, what are the dates, what's important to you. And then we only show them 2 options, like A or B, not the 100 that we have. And then we say, look, you got to pick these right now because they're going to be gone and you're going to live with regret. You're going to contact us a month from now and they're going to be gone. So is there a business-to-business application where you can get it down to 2 and create that kind of urgency, or is it not the same?
Yeah, I mean, what I've seen a lot, it's related to it, is it's called anchoring. And you've probably seen it, not just in business, but you've seen it even like, for example, with fast food, where there's actually 3 options, right? But what they really want you to buy is the one in the middle. So you anchor around, so, you see this, you mentioned Salesforce.com, there's pro and whatever, team and enterprise or something like that, right? There's bronze, silver, gold. What we really want to do is drive people to the silver. And so sometimes you have a product that really is just there, again, as an anchor point. You see in the restaurant business, like this idea of a freaking gold hamburger or whatever it is, right? It's $1,000 pizza because it's got diamonds and truffles and shit. Yeah. What are they doing? Yeah. Right? What is the purpose of that? Well, part of that is to generate publicity. Yes. But again, it's a bit of a door in the face, right? Yes. You're like, okay, well, I don't want the $1,000 pizza, but the $50 pizza sounds like a good deal. Yeah. Where normally you'd be like, $50 for pizza is a little rich. So I think, these are psychological principles where you get someone to, because the idea here, the neuroscience principle here is that humans do not know the absolute value of anything. We only know the relative value of it. Right. Why are these baseball players pissed off because they only got $74 million in their contract last year? What the fuck, right? Yes. Well, it's $74 million as well. The other guy's getting $85 million, and my numbers are just as good. So why is mine $74 million? Yes. So literally, it's all relative. We don't know the absolute value of anything. Yeah. So what you have to do is you have to frame. You have to frame it so that you're like, okay, well, you don't want this low thing and this high thing. Well, some of you might buy this high thing, but really you're trying to drive them towards that thing in the middle. Yeah. Or maybe there's 2. There's an A and a B in the middle. Yeah. And that's really what you're trying to do. Like the ones on the wings you don't care about, but the A and the B in the middle is what you care about. And that's actually, they're not even really paying attention to these. They're paying attention to the ones in the middle, and that's our A-B. Yes. So Mark, for the listeners, I'm sure 95% of people are not salespeople, like less than 5% of people are salespeople. But these principles are important, and every company that we've ever gone to in our business, we go in and I can tell the owners, we're going to double your sales in 90 days. And they say, well, how do you know we're going to do it? We say, well, we have a track record. And the first thing I do is when I meet any salesperson, I say, what's your favorite sales book? And I'm just quiet and I listen. Yeah. And usually they're just like, they've never read a sales book. This is a fact. And I'll say, oh, okay, who's your favorite sales trainer? And I'll just sit and just not say a word and wait. And they're just like, they don't know what to say. And generally speaking, most salespeople, if you ask them, what's your favorite sales book or favorite sales trainer, like just try this for fun, they don't have an answer. And most companies do not invest in sales training. And this is this is why most companies are not doing as well as they could be. Because the stuff we've talked about, we've put in the 10,000 hours learning this stuff. Most people haven't even spent 100 hours. Like this is their career, and salespeople get paid a lot of money. They're usually the highest paid people in companies, especially software sales. I know software sales guys that work 3 hours a day make $500,000 a year. But if they're not willing to invest the 100 hours or the 1,000 hours studying, some of the books that we've talked about or some of the greats, like I learned from Brian Tracy, which became a friend of mine. And some of the principles are they're timeless. And it's important. But for the people that are not salespeople, I'd tell you that sales is the most important part of your business, period. I don't care if you're a startup, whatever you're doing. And if you're not finding salespeople and investing in them and getting the sales training they need, you're really doing yourself a huge disservice. Yeah, I think everybody, whether you're, in a go-to-market role or not, should be reading some stuff about sales. Again, even in your personal life, I think it's really important. So I mentioned some of my favorite books, which are Spin Selling and Challenger Sale, which are really great. But actually, you mentioned Brian Tracy. I learned a lot of great stuff from Brian Tracy. I mean, probably the most important was, he says, go for the no, which I do all the time, every situation, which is, again, your job as a persuader is not to persuade people if it's not in their interest, right? So I think you want to be in a position where they really want it, where you go and say, why wouldn't this work for you? Right. I want to know all the reasons why this is going to fail. and you actually get them on your side and go, well, it could for this and that, but I don't think that's a big deal. I don't think those are big reasons why this would fail. And they almost kind of convince themselves. And if not, if they really see too much risk in it, well, it's probably not a great prospect anyway. And as a salesperson, or I should say, as a persuader, you're just better off moving to the next person who's just going to be a better fit. Like, why try to hit a square peg in a round hole?
And I learned that and you can use dating as an example. So think of the high school dance. And, the boys, and there's a bunch of girls along the wall, and the boy goes to the first girl and he says, would you like to dance? And the first girl says no. And the second girl, he asks, would you like to dance? She says no. And the third girl says yes. Now, does he go back and argue with the other two, or just dance with the girl that wants to dance with him? And I think it's about dancing with who wants to dance with us. And some will, some won't. So what? I remember a sales trainer taught me about, it's like when somebody has a cigarette and like the ash, like it falls on your thing, it's gonna like burn a hole here. Like you get rid of it. Like some will, some won't. So what? Like you got to move on. It's a numbers game. But I see a lot of sales get all frustrated, and they get like, I know my product is good for that company and it's gonna be great, but no, like that guy didn't get it. Next, move on. There's 8 billion people here. There's 100 million companies to talk to. Like it's just move on. And the thing is, if you do the 100 calls, you get better and better, and your skills get better. And that's what's exciting about it.
Yeah, I've got a story about it. So my top sales rep ever, I'm not sure you met her. Her name was Jill Brubaker, and now it's Jill Rowley.
Okay.
She sold more than the next few reps combined at my company. Made almost $1 million a year one year, and that was $1 million a year. That was back in like 2006.
Amazing.
So that's probably $1.5 million or something, $1.6 million today. And not only did she sell that much, but she also had 4 kids, 1 biological kid, 3 step kids. Wow. She was in amazing physical shape. So how on earth
did she do that? Talk about time management.
Yeah. So some of it, I would say part of she's very disciplined, and she's one of these people that got up at 5:30 and she went out for a run and all that kind of stuff. She did all that stuff.
Yeah.
But a matter of fact, I really built my next company partly based on her principles. But one of the things what you just mentioned to your point, one of the things she told me that was surprising to me, she's like, Mark, I've learned I need to dumb myself down to sell better. Like, what do you mean? She's like, I used to be she was a very creative sales rep. She was a top rep at Salesforce.com, and she's clever and creative. So she would try to make things work. She'd find a live prospect. It wasn't quite a great fit, and she would try to figure out how to make things work for it and spend a lot of time. She's like, I don't do that anymore. This is what a perfect prospect looks like. It's in this box.
Okay.
And if it's not going to be in this box, I'm going to move on.
Next.
Because I'm so much more efficient when I find someone in that box.
Yes.
And then when she finds someone in that box, and then she's really effective. And one of the other things that she did that was really effective, and why I built a whole company on it, was that she didn't do a lot of the selling.
Interesting.
She got other people to do the selling for her.
Okay.
So whether those are people sometimes in the company where she had great relationships with the solution engineers and other people like that, but more often it was her happy customers already.
The social proof?
All the social proof. And she would get them literally say, then the prospect say, what's the next step in the sales process? Like the next step in the process is you're going to talk to 2 people that you really respect, and they're going to tell you the truth about this. And I'm out of there and I'm going to come back later. So it saved her time because she wasn't doing the second, like literally the second sales call she didn't do.
Yes.
She did the closing call.
Yes.
The second sales call was done by people that she took care of.
Yes.
They convinced the prospect. And then the next thing was just like, okay, how are we going to launch this and who's going to get involved and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So, honestly, I think if we can do these things that Jill did, which was, hyped up before, we're in shape, right? Yeah. Hyped up before every sales call. She's always looking good. She always looks like a professional for every single sales call that she does. Really diligent on the follow-ups. Yeah. Always did prospecting, no matter what. So 20% of her week, she's still looking for new prospects all the time. She didn't always depend on marketing for it. And then the box, right? And then get other people to do the selling for you. Yes. And enormously successful person.
So just on this point, I know we're wrapping up. 4 out of 5 millionaires work for somebody else. So for some of you that are thinking about your next half, your next career, I would highly recommend sales, and it doesn't have to be your own company. Yeah. Your own company takes the life out of you. It sucks the life out of you. You have no life. There's no days off. It's incredibly hard. We love it, but it's incredibly hard and most people can't handle it. but you can become a millionaire if you're not already one and make $1 million a year working for someone else. I mean, that's incredible. And learning sales, now it's obviously changed, but the human fundamentals haven't. Some of the technologies, the techniques have changed. You know, we use Zoom now. But I think it's an incredible career for most people, and it will help you in every area of your life.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if I had to do something, ask me, so what would you do if you weren't running your own company? You know, would you be a VP of marketing or whatever? It's like, no, I'd just be a sales guy.
Right.
I would make way more money. I have a lot more freedom.
Yeah, have more fun.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think everybody would benefit from learning these principles of persuasion.
Yes. So in wrapping up the best half today, we encourage you to learn about sales and persuasion because these are techniques that are going to help you in every area of your life. And you are a 1%er. Mark and I, we've decided in our life, at this stage of our life, we only want to hang around the 1%ers. And what we learned is the 1%ers don't start a book and never finish it. They don't start a podcast, never finish it. They actually go to the end. And you are a 1%er. So today we'd like to reach out to you. We want to hear from you directly. I know we're on different, we're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and there's different ways to follow or like or YouTube, but we want you to reach out to us because we want to have a relationship with you, and we encourage getting to know you. Have an amazing day.
Shouldn't we say get in touch with us, but we don't know.
I don't know what to say. Okay,
no.
That was my portion. You try. I don't know. You try.
No. So I'll jump in and just go. Go the best. No, just go the besthalfshow.com.
Yeah. So do you're a 1%er. You're at the end. Something about that. You know what to say.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. You did such a good thing. You got a lot of passion about
except the end.
Well, you want to just record that part again, or? Okay. I just wanted to jump in and say, go to thebesthalfshow.com.
So do that. Just do that part.
Because there's no call to action.
Okay, fine. So then you're going to cut to him and you'll do that part.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
And where should the 1%ers go, Roman, to go and connect with us directly?
So we built a brand new website. It's called thebesthalfshow.com. And again, it's thebesthalfshow.com. Go register on our website because we want to build a relationship with you. All right. Good. Awesome. Good work.
Thank you.
Nice work. That was good. That was a good one.